Hey, what's going on, WBE fans? It is General Tar Heel bringing you the Pickems for Week 4. And unfortunately, I don't have my good buddy Troy CJ with me today, but we have a special guest, and it's Sock. Sock, would you like to say hi to the people?
Yo, what's up, WBE? It's Sock with another week, well, first week for the Pick'em crew on the WBE channel.
I'm so happy to have Sock here. It's an honor. It is an honor to have you here, Sock. Thank you so much.
Thank you. But it's truly my pleasure to be here. And you know what else is truly my pleasure? Going through the Twitter votes. So recently, we've actually been putting your fan votes on the Twitter page at Pokemon WBE. And each week we'll tweet out the matchups, and that is how we're deciding the fan pick that's going to be on the slides. And we're going to reference them just like an analyst, so you guys get to pick who you think will win.
It's just a way to keep y'all all part of the video, so that way you can support it more and more. And we know you guys love this content, so we are trying to pump out as much as we can and improve it as much as we can here for the WBE, because this is one of the best leagues out there, for sure.
Absolutely.
And speaking as the channel as a whole, make sure to sub to it if you haven't already, because, I mean, these videos are amazing from the analysts every week. I don't know why you wouldn't do it anyways. It's actually kind of hurting my feelings if you're not subbed right now, so I would really appreciate it if you drop a sub. And of course, drop us up to all the coaches. They are doing a beautiful job with their battles every week, as well as their team builders. Whatever they put out, they're just beautiful people and amazing battlers. And of course, if you love them so much, you can buy a shirt either with their team logo or the WBE logo down in the description, as well as to make sure to check out those Ninja servers, because those Pokemon servers are really cool and really fun time.
I actually just bought my generic WBE shirt, so that's getting shipped to me, and I'm going to be recording in that WBE shirt from now. So be sure to grab one while you can, guys. They're quality shirts. But yeah.
They're beautiful shirts, and I think you're going to look great in it, Sock, in all honesty.
Beautiful people wear beautiful shirts, and the WBE applies to there.
Easier said than done.
Alright, but our first game here is the Chicago Buffalons, coached by the almighty Sacred, versus the San Diego Chimchargers in Lord MV. Now, I don't see a good switch-in for Victini. Special set with Fire Stab, Psychic, Grass, and Electric claims a kill every time it comes on in. And I think the Scarfers are also going to be key here. Mienshao versus Scarf Heracross are going to be the two things to watch, because whichever one can break first, I think that team can take home the entire game. Also, Belladrum Azumarill does a ton of work, especially late game. He can set up on like Audino or Rhyperior or even Arcanine. Like, there's a lot of things he could set up on to win the game. And it looks like the analysts are also going all the way down with praying in the Lord Envy. And it's even Chris Cobain's lock. Tar Heel, what do you think?
Personally, I got to go towards Envy. He's just having a great start to the season so far. Sacred's having a little bit of a rough start, but definitely with the matchup between the two Scarfers, like you mentioned, are going to be pretty interesting. Ditto's just could be really helpful as well versus like things such as Mega Arrow, because I personally don't think the Buffalons have that great a check, so they're like an opposing Mega Arrow going against them, so that's something they definitely have to look out for. Going into the next match, we have the Florida Gators, coached by It's Gator, going up against the Bristol City Blazekins, coached by Game Boy Luke. And when I'm looking at this, I'm mainly looking at Zorora. Zorora is the main offense for the Florida Gators right here. They do an absolutely amazing job. As long as Gator's able to scout a Scarf Revenge Killer for Zorora, he's looking pretty easy. A nice Life Orb cleanup duty Zorora set with Plasma Fist, HP Ice, Fire Punch, Close Combat. It's looking absolutely beautiful right here. Delmise is going to have a big defensive role with dealing with major threats for the Bristol City Blazekins. Having Delmise is going to let them check the Zorora, Keldeo, and potentially Mega Hera on the Florida Gator side, which are both very strong offensive Pokemon that typically the Gators kind of capitalize on. While Pyukumuku for the Gators is going to be important to both stall and prevent Necrozma Sweep, because I feel like Necrozma is going to be doing very well considering the Gators do not have a Dark type, which is always terrifying when you're going to make a person or a Pokemon such as Necrozma or Reuniclus. All of those Pokemon are very scary. But I also see a potential Belly Drum Slurpuff having very strong potential, especially if you're able to deal with Mega Scizor and not worry about the Bullet Punch. I feel like that's the only real counter versus it, because being able to get off the Drain Punch and everything should be pretty helpful. But having the good removal on the Blazekins is also going to help versus hazard stacking from the Florida Gators. They could easily put that out, but I feel like it's going to be pretty simple. So I decided to go with the Florida Gators, and every other analyst except Chris Selke decided to go with the Florida Gators as well. And when it comes down to the fan vote, we have Actually, 60% going in favor of the Bristol City Basicans, so Game Boy Luke taking over the fans. What do you think about that, Sock?
I can totally see where they're coming from. Mega Scizor is such a threat in this game that I honestly see why. I think Pyukumuku is going to have to do a big role in this game, like you said.
For sure.
Hopping right into our next game, we have the Atlanta Umbreons versus the New York Noibets. And the first thing I see about this is the Incarnates finally meet in a showdown. Tornadus versus Thunderous Incarnate. Now, Tornadus has a decent matchup if Sylveon and Cloyster are all dealt with, or if not, weakened first. Fanatax does need to worry about a Scarfire Dragon, because that could really hurt him a lot. Just the dual stabs kind of run through his team. One of the biggest factors, though, in this game is if Lucario comes, how does Atlanta handle it? A special version has about the same merit as a physical one, and both have really good late game potential to just flat win. And the one thing that could save him is Meloetta. It has a surprisingly amazing matchup. I can see Assault Vest with Thunderbolt, Dazzling Gleam, Psychic, and Focus Mist doing tremendous amounts of work, and it could be the thing that swings the game into his favor. And going into the analysts, we do see CJ, Tar Heel, and Cress all picking the Atlanta, while you guys, the fans, ended up picking Fanatax as well. So what do you think the Fanatax are going to win?
So I love Nate. He's been doing it as a pretty solid start, but after the win last week for the Umbreons, even though it did come down to a miss on a Draco, I feel like that's going to hype them up for the next battle and be able to capitalize on it and hopefully start a win streak for themselves. But I always am a big fan of Mega Gardevoir. I feel like it's going to do a lot of work, and I feel like they're going to be pressuring Mega Steelix enough to where it's not going to really be too much of a problem for a Steel type on the team, personally. Next up, we have the Maryland Terrapins, coached by Under the Radar, going up against the Melbourne Rotoms and Cybertron. Now, this is probably going to be the first time that I'm going to go against Kelly, and he's going to be a little upset for me about that, but it's okay. He's going to have to deal with it. So when I'm looking at the Melbourne Rotoms, we have Alolan Marowak and Mamoswine pressuring the Maryland Terrapins defensive core so heavily, potentially forcing like a Flame Orb, Milotic of course, and they have to be aware of like a Freeze Dry Mamo. It also pressures Pokemon such as the Mesprit and the Mega Aggron pretty heavily, so they just have to be aware of that because they don't really have like free Wish Pass or anything to get into the team, because really your only Wish Pass is Wigglytuff, and even though Under the Radar is a firm believer in Wigglytuff, I still don't think it is the best, at least for this matchup. And their only hazard removal in Defog Superior is going to be a big issue when it comes to Stealth Rocks, as well as a spike stack of Selgor. Yes, Pokemon such as Mesprit don't really get affected by the spikes, but overall, when you have a strong momentum team in Darmanitan, Mesprit, and Alolan Persian, that's not really something that you want to be like looking forward to. You really want to get those hazards off the field, use those pivots to your advantage, because Darmanitan's really going to want to like U-turn on the pretty obvious Mega Slowbro switch in, to where it gets that nice super effective U-turn chip off, and then maybe eventually late game it can literally just spam Flare Blitz if it really wants to. But really, the Melbourne Victinies just have hard counters to the Maryland offense. With Superior, you got a counter in Sap Sipper Meltank and Rotom Heat. Zygarde, there's Mamoswine right there with Ice Shard. That's absolutely terrifying. And even Xurkitree is walled off by immunities with Mamoswine and Alolan Marowak having its Lightning Rod. So I did have to go with the Melbourne Rotoms this week, but I am actually the only one decided to go up against Kelly, and I feel like he's going to be even more upset now because everyone else decided to go with him. And when it came down to the fans, it seems like people voted in the Maryland Terrapins. This was actually a really close poll, 52% to 48% in the Maryland Terrapins' favor.
My biggest thing with this matchup is looking at Pangoro. I think Pangoro is going to be one of the most key Pokemon brought this game, simply because it can help deal with the Mamoswine. So if he brings Zygarde in, he doubles into Pangoro on the Mamoswine swap in, and now he has to choose what he either A, wants to let take a really strong fighting type attack, or B, take a parting shot that he can get back into another one of his strong hitters. So I think Pangoro is going to be one of the biggest factors in this game, which is what led me to choose Kelly and the Terrapins. Next up here, we have the Sin City Scizors versus the Miami Donphans. Honestly, in this game, I really struggled to get my head around how Kyle can get around Mega Zam, Incineroar, and Lando T. All three apply so much offensive pressure to Kyle's team, and it just takes one double for the Sin City Scizors to just win the game outright, just getting one swap. Kyle has to not let webs go up, if they get up against him, he's put on the back foot. And with the 3 Mons, Zam, Incineroar, and Lando T, he cannot be on the back foot in this game. Otherwise, he will just get out-pressured, and Webs help that as well. If he does default, he has to be careful because Primeape can get the boost and do some work as well. The easiest way for Kyle to win, though, is to make sure Volcanion is in. And if he can set up a Flame Charge, that has a lot of merit in this game. And going off our picks for the analyst, it looks like everyone except Dr. Slacking and Cress picked the Sin City Scissors as well, while you guys at home ended up doing 71% with Patty and his Sin City Scissors as well.
Patty's been having a pretty good start so far into the season, and honestly, his team is probably one of my favorites out of all the rosters. It's just so reliable, and even though I love both the heat and the drip from the Miami Dawn fans for their double weather, it's just been slacking a little lately. I know he's been getting some unfortunate hacks or something of the sort, but I feel like it's just not yet for him to bounce back because the Cincinnati Cities have a pretty good matchup. Going up next, we have the Seattle Sea Kings, coached by Jodor, going against the Durham Druddigons and 6-foot Hacks. Looking at this game, I see 2 important fairy types coming in here. You might not see a fairy type on the Durham Druddigons, but basically his fairy type is just Sovali. Leo told me that is the only reason he basically picked up Sovali, but it's going to be a pretty decent fairy, and I feel like it's going to be pretty important in this matchup for Infernape and Haxorus and Sneasel. As well as Sneasel just getting a reduced knockoff against the Savali because of it just carrying the card. I forget the name of the card, but you know what I mean.
Disc?
Yes, exactly that. Thank you. Giving it its fairy typing. And then for the Seattle Sea Kings, Granbull is going to be very important here because it is a strong check to Mega Lopunny, having the Intimidate to reduce it, as well as watching out for like potential sweeper Dragonite. Dragonite, of course, can run like a DD Iron Tail Z if it really wants to, with Corkscrew Crash in order to deal with Granbull, but it's really there to check the Mega Lopunny. It's one of the better checks there are out there, so it's very helpful for him to have that. So these fairies are going to play a big defensive role, I feel like, going into this match. Trick Room Reuniclus, one of Leo's favorite sets so far into the season. I can see doing a lot of work because the Seattle Sea Kings have a decent amount of speed compared to Reuniclus because Reuniclus is a very slow Pokemon, and being able just to carry like Hidden Power Fire in order to deal with the Scizor and then just Psychic coverage in general is really going to help the team. Of course, you got to watch out with that Sneasel. It could be an easy Pursuit Trapper to help deal with Reuniclus because it is a big threat. But apart from that, Reuniclus is going to do a decent amount of damage. I feel like, pretty sure it's Leo's MVP right now, and he's been playing it pretty well, so I feel like it's going to be something for the Sea Kings to definitely look out for. But I would also really like to see Durant set. Durant could easily weaken the Seattle Sea Kings team because Durant is just a hard hitting with that hustle. So as long as Leo can land his moves, he's going to be doing plenty of damage versus Sea Kings. And I can easily see either that Trick Room Reuniclus cleaning up or potential Z Rain Dance Manaphy, or Manaphy just carrying the Z Psychic in order to deal with that Mega Venusaur. Because we all know how thick Mega Venusaur is and how big of a problem it can be to kill sometimes. So as long as he's got that big power in the back, I feel like he can easily deal with it. But even though I think the matchup is probably a little bit more in the Sea Kings' favor, I'm going to have to go with the Durham Druddigons. My boy Leo, he's been doing very well this season compared to Jodor so far. I hope Jodor can bounce back at one point, but I definitely feel like Leo's got this on lock with his team.
Yeah, Joe definitely has the matchup advantage, and I want to root for Joe. He's kind of my roommate, but I can't pick against Leo and the way he's been playing, and Joe has not been playing the best Pokemon he can be at the moment. The one thing to watch out for, in my opinion, is Jellicent. I think Jellicent could be a really cool bring on Joe's end to help stop the Dragonite as well. And Infernape can bring Poison Jab, so it could be something to see as well.
And when it came down to the picks, all the analysts decided to go with the Durham Druddigons, and you at home also decided to agree on the Durham Druddigons for this vote.
Going into our next game here, we do have the Pittsburgh Pirates versus the Chicago Cub Chews, which is Old Man Tup versus Galactic Elliot. Now, looking at this matchup, I see a lot of opportunities for Scarf Chandelure to claim a kill if Tyranitar goes down. Having Mantine, Serena, and Hoopa U are always great ways to pressure T-Tar. However, if the T-Tar is played well, it can be all the difference. I see Roserade also doing some work against most of Elliot's team, including Scolipede. However, if Scolipede does have the ability to set up, it could rock Tup's world very badly. His best stop to Scolipede, if it gets the +2/+2, is hoping Alolan Dugtrio lives a hit. And Alolan Ninetales could play a big part in this game as well if brought offensively, doing loads of damage to Tup's answers. You guys at home decided to go with Elliott at a 70% vote, while the analysts all decided to go with the Chicago Cub Chews, except Jacob as always.
Yeah, Jacob likes to go for the underdog pick every now and then, and Tup could definitely pull it off for sure. But after the few weeks where I've had faith in him with that beautiful Mega Charizard X, it just hasn't worked out. But when I have went for Elliott, he's pulled it through every time, so I have to stick with my boy Galactic Elliott for this one for sure. In the next matchup, we have the Milwaukee Beavers, coached by Wolfie Glick, going up against the Rochester Rhydons and my boy Iron Boffin. When looking into this matchup, Weezing is one of the best counters to Mega Altaria, and having that is going to be so important because without it, I feel like Mega Altaria could be a very big threat. Yes, you have the Sand Rush Excadrill in the back that could be pretty important to help counter that, but in the end, Weezing is going to be pretty helpful, especially with potential and Z Haze. Carrying that is not only going to be able to prevent the setup from the Mega Altaria, but also be able to heal Weezing back up and also be a switch-in for Weavile, having the reduced knockoff, and you can carry the potential Fire-type coverage like Fire Blast or Flamethrower if you really want to get the super effective damage off on Weavile, even though I feel like Sludge Bomb would be pretty good enough. When it comes down to it, Sand Rush Excadrill absolutely destroys the Rhydons. It's going to be pretty difficult for them to deal with it. As long as you're able to get decent amount of chip on Suicune, which I feel like is going to be pretty simple over time, especially when Sand's going to potentially just be able to negate leftovers on Suicune if they opt to bring that. It's going to be pretty nice, and Gengar overall just wears down the Rochester Rhydons pretty easily. I'm a big fan of Gengar, so as long as he's able to avoid the Pursuit Trap from Weavile, whether that's a Colbur Berry, substitute Gengar, or just play around it pretty easily, I suppose. I don't really know how else to really avoid that, but Gengar easily puts in plenty of work. But overall, with the defensive core of Mandibuzz, Gigalith, and Weezing, I feel like it's going to be almost impossible for the Rochester Rhydons to break it, in my personal opinion. And all the analysts this week decided to go in and pick the Milwaukee Beavers. 2 of their analysts using their lock-in as well. And for you guys at home, you decided to vote 91% the Milwaukee Beavers and 9% for the Rochester Rhydons. So unfortunately for Iron Boffin, they're getting beneath double digits, but it would be an amazing Cinderella story.
It would be. However, the one thing kind of putting the final nail in the coffin, as you said, is Gengar. Gengar does so much work in this game, and he has to be aware of Pursuit Trap Weavile, yes. However, Gengar can do so much work in this game to just put this game even out of reach very early on.
For sure.
Moving into our next game, we have the Milwaukee Saws Bucks, coached by Magnitude, versus the Pittsburgh Pirates, coached by Numnexus. Now, first thing I look at is Goodra. It has a really solid bring this week, in my opinion, stopping any Thundurus that wants to come, and it can help with Tangrowth and checking Clefable and Azelf, while also leaving Tangrowth to help mainly focus on Garchomp if need be. Now, Mega Medicam is a monster this game, as it can kind of destroy Steve along with something like X-Cloud, which puts Steve on the back foot early. Now, Steve does have a shot at this. It's going to be Hitmonlee and Thundurus pairing to break Nexus's solid bulk core. I could see it happening if he gets the right double, but it's hard to pick against Swampert, Tangrowth, Zapdos, and Goodra on the same team. And you guys ended up saying that as well, with 63% with the Pittsburgh Pirates and only 37% with Steve. The analysts...
Yeah,
sorry.
Go ahead, sorry.
The analysts having almost a split. A majority of us going for the Pittsburgh Pirates. CJ, Chris Cobain, Slacking, and Cress decided that they think Steve can win this game.
When it came down to it, I have to go with Nexus. He had a nice win last week versus John and the New Orleans Pelippers, so I feel like bouncing off of that, especially when I believe it was like a 4-0.
Yeah.
Bouncing off of such a nice win like that and be able to finally get like a solid win with this team, I feel like it's going to just bring a momentum into this match. And Steve not doing so hot so far into this season, I feel like that's going to give him the advantage, along with already a pretty decent matchup. Next up, we have the LA Spice, coached by K-Cray, going against the Tennessee Trubbish, coached by Deathly I Am. Looking into this matchup, something dies in the sun just about. Mega Houndoom is looking terrifying. I say that a lot almost every week because it's just what Mega Houndoom does. That thing in sun is absolutely terrifying. I once did a random showdown battle, and I got a Sunny Day Mega Houndoom, and I just swept all 6 Pokemon, and it was a beautiful thing. But when it comes down to it, the really only counter to Mega Houndoom I feel like the Tennessee Trubbish do have would be a nice bulky Assault Vest Embor, but I feel like getting chip on Embor wouldn't be that hard. One, if you're able to keep Stealth Rocks up, that's a nice 12% every time, which isn't bad at all. And Embor in general, if it wants to click like Flare Blitz, it's already going to be taking recoil damage, especially if you're able to capitalize on it with like a bulky Rocky Helmet Garchomp, then you're able to get so much chip offers to the potential Embor. And then boom, the counter is directly gone. It is out of here. Mega Houndoom can just continue clicking moves and getting kills for sure. But when it comes down to it, I feel like Mawile is going to be a little important here, going up against Tyrantrum and Mega B, especially if you're able to pair that with a Shuckaberry and potentially just catch the opponent off guard and be able to get a KO with like Iron Head, because Mega B, one, doesn't have the best defenses, and Tyrantrum, of course, is weak to both of Mawile's stabs, but Tyrantrum being that general rock type, it does have pretty solid defense, so you do have to be aware of that. But even getting chip off Tyrantrum may just prevent it from continuously being a threat, because we all know what Choice Band Tyrantrum can do, and if that were to be that, then Mawile can't really do too much even with the Intimidate ability. With Celesteela having the potential of being trapped by Magnezone, I feel like Mimikyu has an amazing time right here, because having the Disguise ability and being able to get up that free Swords Dance is going to be so key here, because it's just going to be able to basically, especially with Celesteela gone, because that's really the only thing that counters it, just get off a free SD with this Disguise and just sweep the team. I feel like they really can't do anything on the Trubbish side when it comes down to it, especially with the priority Shadow Sneak. So overall, the matchup is very difficult for Tennessee Trubbish, and even with the momentum win from last week against the Rochester Rhydons, I feel like this is definitely going to be in K. Curry's favor. And when it comes down to the analysts, it's pretty split. We have, about in the minority going for the Tennessee Trubbish, we have 3 coaches with Choice CJ, Chris Cobain, and Chris Selke going for definitely I Am. And when it came down to the people's vote, pretty close vote, but we have 54% in favor of the LA Spice and K-Curry, so the people decided to go with K this time around.
And I can't blame them whatsoever. Mega Houndoom is just an absolute beast in this game, and it's going to be interesting to see how Deathly tries to handle that, but it puts too much pressure on Deathly to not pick K-Curry this game. Now, moving into another good game, we have the New Orleans Pelipers versus the Newcastle Nidoking. The Pelipers coached by John, aka Pokemon 7, and the Newcastle Nidoking coached by Patters. Now, this could finally be the week we get to see myself being Scarf, and I actually get to get off the bench. A Scarf Sock. It brought Earthquake, Close Combat, and Ice Punch kind of tear through most of Patters' team. However, Scavalier can take 2 and dish out a hit back to Revenge. So that's something we do need to be careful of. Terrakion loves this matchup. Dual Stab along with Iron Head, EQ is such a good bring. You don't even need setup. Just attack and Terrakion just clicks buttons. I do see though that Hippowdon does have a fairly good matchup this week. Kind of keeping most of John's team at the bay, bar Mence and Diancie. It does hold Patters' team very nicely this game, and I think it's going to be the Mon to watch this game. Now, regarding the fans, you guys decided to pick the Newcastle Nidoking and Patters at 68% to 32%. And as for the analysts, only myself and JB Westside selecting the Newcastle Nidoking to win this game. Everyone else going for John and the Pelipers.
I had to go for John. He's my boy, and I'm having faith this week in this matchup. It's looking pretty good, and I cannot confirm nor deny, Sock, that when I was in the front office looking at the matchup for John, that you happen to be the first Mon I looked at. Just saying.
I mean, I'm always the first Mon people look at. It's almost like I'm an analyst here.
Ooh, true.
Hey.
And in the next match, we have the Minnesota Vikavolt coached by Dan, aka Drive, going up against the New York Marauders and Mr. Talent. Looking into this matchup, Kieran Black, enough said. That's basically how it goes for majority of matchups for Kieran Black. The thing is an absolute monster. But the only checks I really see are a nice bulky Audino, of course, a kind of typical Shucka and Empoleon would be a decent counter. Empoleon's not really going to be doing too much back, especially since you don't always want to force like Flash Cannon coverage on Empoleon, I'd say. Mega Audino could do decent, especially with like Dazzling Gleam and everything like that. Having to try and stall it with Wish Protect could be potential, but a really strong like Icy Kieran Black could just blow back Mega Audino potentially. A lot of people aren't ready for it, and basically that just picks up kill. And the only form of for Empoleon getting reliable coverage to be able to switch back into Kieran Black multiple times is in that auto no. So they have to be aware of that, and even then, Kieran Black can just run Bolt Strike to hit the Empoleon. You don't even have to worry about the potential Shuckaberry. It's just kind of like Earth Power is kind of free, especially if they opt to just go in a completely special attack in Kieran Black instead of the mix physical. So they just have to be aware of that. Florges is pressured pretty heavily in this matchup when dealing with both Latios and Buzzwole, which I would say are decent offensive threats when it comes down to it, but not the strongest. It's just Buzzwole stabs could be pretty overwhelming, and they have to respect Hazard Stack when it comes to Nihilego, so I really feel like Hazard Removal on Skarmory will be pretty important. They could also potentially bring Defog on Florges as well, but I feel like Florges could benefit more from the Cleric, especially if there's like a T-Spikes brought from the Nihilego. And otherwise, they're just going to be punished by the constant hazards. You're not going to be able to switch in Kieran Black as much, which is very important. You always want very solid removal when it comes to Kieran Black, and that's why you got Skarmory being one of the best in the game when it comes to hazard removal. And also, I'm looking directly at SD Lycanroc Dusk. That thing's going to be absolutely terrifying. Could definitely take just the entire game, and like near the end of it could end up sweeping for sure. Difficult matchup when it comes down to it for the New York Marauders, and I'm kind of just seeing the entire favor going in the Minnesota Vikavolt. Love my boy Drew, but if I have to go with Dan here, all the analysts decide to go with the Minnesota Vikavolt here, and when it came down to the votes, y'all did 83% for Dan and the Minnesota Vikavolt going against 17% for the New York Marauders.
My biggest thing with this is I love Buzzwole so much, and the way Talent's team fits it, it's perfect fit. However, looking at Dan's team, a Scarf Buzzwole does have some good merit, but it can't do enough this game to carry the team, and I think Dan has enough checks ready for it to kind of stop that. Moving into our second to last game here, we have the South Texas Sableyes versus the Free State Torcats, which is in vivid color for the Sableyes, and Duncan can't die for the Torcats. Now, Duncan is coming off of what I would call the upset of the season so far. Called it, by the way.
I can agree with that, honestly. That was kind of amazing.
Now, Jeezers Creasers Batman D-Dance Mega Tyranitar is a giant threat this game. Like, Vivid does not appreciate that, and Scarf Blacephalon. It forces Hawlucha to go for a flying type attack on the Blacephalon, which really can be brutal. So I don't see Hawlucha being able to fully win this game until Blacephalon and or Tyranitar goes down both ways. Now, I do see Nidoking doing some fantastic things this game. Ice Beam, Earth Power, Sludge Wave, and a filler move, maybe like Toxic Spike, can do a lot of work this game and just keep pressure on Duncan. However, Jirachi is going to be really fun this game. To see what Duncan can do after last week's crazy set, will he go back to a more basic approach, or will he show the power of Jirachi again? And you guys at home decided to agree with me, and going in the Free State Torcats, 75% of the vote. Now, back on the analyst side, only me, JB, and Cress picked the Free State Torcats. Everyone else went with Vivid.
Guilty as charged. Yeah, I couldn't go against Vivid again for 2 weeks in a row. It just kind of felt wrong. I had to with that Patters matchup, but I feel like he can pull it through here. Mew could definitely have a potential set that'd be able to help him out, because you always got to just be aware of set of Mew. Very dangerous. And you pointed out Nidoking. I think it has a beautiful matchup. Really only a Araquanid probably being the best switch-in for that. Mm-hmm. And I feel like he'd be able to pull it out, but there are definitely a lot of scary things on the Free State Torcats, especially just coming off of that massive win versus Wolfie. That's going to be terrifying for sure, but I feel like Vivid could pull through. Mm-hmm. And lastly, for Week 4, we have the Toronto Togekiss, coached by the Heat and Mo, going up against the Bronx Beartitch, coached by Pokeaim or Joey. And looking at this match, Linoon is a big threat. It is always a threat. You have to respect Linoon. Yes, I am friends with Under the Radar, as you can tell. But Joey definitely has some decent checks to Linoon. I'm not going to lie about that, but he still has to be aware of like not allowing the freest of setup, whether it's just setting up his late game to have the direct check to Linoon coming in and just not letting a free belly drum or anything sort. Just has to be aware of that. Definitely going to most likely see a Chilon Berry coming out here. Always reliable going up against Linoon for sure. Potentially on something like Crocodile. I wouldn't be entirely surprised, I suppose, especially with Intimidate Crocodile helping them out right there. But Mo also has to respect Gothitelle. Even though they have a dark type on the team in the Mega Absol, they still have to be aware of it, because Gothitelle just does Gothitelle things, and you could be in a very long battle if it does what it wants to, and it can just sweep you if it doesn't get crit or anything of the sort. But when I'm looking at Gothitelle, sure, that's a decent sweeper, but I'm definitely seeing Comfey doing a tremendous amount of work. Once again, I saw this when Hidemo faced the Rochester Rhydons and Mega Altaria. When your steel type is only Cobalion and you don't have a poison type, you struggle versus those offensive fairies. That's absolutely terrifying. Comfey can definitely just get up a nice Calm Mind versus some of these Pokemon and just start sweeping with Draining Kiss with that priority. It's going to be very difficult for the Togekiss to deal with that, I feel like, so they have to be very aware with that. And when I'm looking at Scarf Moxie Crook, I feel like that thing could definitely just clean up late game, do all it wants to with those Moxie boosts. It's going to be very important to watch out for those justified checks, though, because you have both it on Cobalion and the Mega or Absol before Mega Evolution, so just got to be aware of that. But overall, I feel like the matchup is in the Toronto Togekiss favor, but I can't go against Joey in this matchup. I frankly can't. So I had to go with Joey, and all the analysts decided to go with Bronx Bear Ticks as well, one of them using their lock-in. And as for the fans back at home, you decide to go 85% with Bronx Bear Ticks, 15% with Togekiss, so it's looking like it's in Joey's favor this week.
I can't pick against Joey. If you guys have been watching the Pickems videos, you know that JB and I we say every week with Joey, he dissects the matchup and picks his point where he is going to go in and attack. As soon as he sees that one turn where he can make an aggressive turn, make an aggressive double, make an aggressive read, he turns a back foot playing kind of defensive with a shield to throwing that shield to the ground and charging you with 2 daggers in each hand offensively. Like, he flip-flops, and it's amazing to see, and I can't pick against him for that.
It's just too insane. From that jawline to that big brain, it's just too much for Joey, dude.
Bless
it really is, though.
Up the jawline.
Strong jaw gonna be there this week, taking a win, potentially.
He's chomping at that bread. He's chomping for the W.
For sure, Joey wants to get this bread. But as for that, that's it for the Pickems for this week for Week 4. Sock, once again, I'd like to thank you for joining me this week since CJ was not available. I really do appreciate it.
Hey, not a problem. Be sure to check out all the other videos on the WBE channel, guys. And if you guys haven't, ring the bell.
Anyways, that's going to be it for the WBE analysts this week. Make sure to check out the rest of the videos. Look forward to the battles from everyone. Team Builders should be going live today as well, so make sure to check those out on everyone's channels if they have them up. But that's going to be it from us, guys. Sub, like, share, deuces.
Peace out.